Welcome to Real Talk with Ray, where we deep dive into real business owners who are making an impact in the business world and other people's lives. We're here to learn about their stories unscripted. Today we have the one and only Ross Whitesburg. He runs an amazing company called Exhibit Potential. And he has quite a fascinating story of how he got here, his hobbies into storm chasing. We've met just briefly at a networking event and we connected right off the bat. And I'm so excited to have him on the show. Incredible, humble guy who has created such a business model that I am a little bit jealous of. So without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Ross. You mentioned it on your LinkedIn, is that you're an avid photographer of storm chasing.
Yeah, I've been storm chasing for like 25 years.
What has been your craziest storm that you've ever chased?
Well, they each have their own little things to it, but I'd say probably the craziest one would have been in El Reno in 2013 in Oklahoma. And in that, I didn't see that new stupid Twisters movie yet. I've only saw the trailer, but I'm not going to watch it because it's so bad that I can't do it. But if you've seen the trailer, there's a water tower that collapses in it, and on the water tower it says El Reno on it, and it was referring probably to that city because they had like one of the largest tornadoes like ever recorded. It was like 2 miles wide or something, and everybody's day was about a couple of seconds away from being a bad day if you didn't make the right choice. And three storm chasers that were in the same car. He was on one of the TV shows, the Storm Chaser TV show. His name was Tim Samaras. Him, his son, and his chase partner got killed at that storm trying to. They do a thing where they, like in the movie, how they had Dorothy or whatever, but he had his own little thing called, I think it was like a turtle or a disc or something that he had sensors and cameras in, and he would try and lay it in the path of a tornado. And this storm was so powerful that it just exploded so fast, and it was so big, and it just caught everybody with their pants down. And we went to go, and my friend's like, we got to go, we went to go drive away, and it was wrapped in rain. And at one point we pulled off to the side of the road, and we can look down, we see all these multiple vortices coming down, like a lot of little tornadoes, not like a big concentrated one, but the whole thing was like rotating. And he's so
So there was this big, you said there's a 2-mile tornado. Is that what you're saying? 2-mile in diameter?
Yeah, like the actual under the mezzo and stuff. You could look at videos for it. There's tons of really good videos. If you want to see a really crazy one, there's one by this guy Dan Sullivan who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And holy shit, man, those guys just they had like, have you seen like the giant hay bales? Those things weigh like 800, 1,000 pounds. Like the wind was blowing it. It blew it into their car, like they drove into it and stuff. It's crazy. It's like, you see the kid driving and he's scared, and like through the window, it looks like there's like a movie going on. There's like all this havoc going on through his window, and somebody tried to drive around them and almost drove over the median. And like literally you see all this stuff out of his window, and it's like, it almost looks fake, but it's not. But anyhow, so that was a crazy storm. And as we were driving away, I couldn't drive the truck faster than like 65 miles an hour. And I literally felt the truck leaning at one point. And there was a car behind us, and the car behind us, their window got broken from like pressure. And about a quarter of a mile behind us was the Weather Channel. They had an SUV that got rolled like 6 times because of RFD and stuff. I saw like the roof of a shed, or not a shed, like a barn or something, get sucked up off the thing. And I said something to my friend about, and he's like, don't worry, it's not going across the road, meaning like it was being sucked up that way rather than being blown that way. That made it a lot worse, so, but we got out of there and it was fine, but it changed my friend's viewpoints of stuff because, if we waited any longer, we would have definitely have had a lot of trouble to get out of there and stuff. So that was probably the craziest day, but I've seen a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, we were driving up a country road one time, and I saw there was a storm forming. I saw a tree branch go flying across the sky above the tree line, and I was like, that's not good. So I stopped the car, and my friends are always looking at the computer, the data and the radar. And all of a sudden, like 2 seconds later, the power line started arcing and shooting sparks across the road. And then the trees that were around us got pushed down like somebody stepped on them. So we were literally like right underneath the start of a tornado, and they issued a tornado warning like right above our heads. And it ended up being like nothing. I was able to turn around and get out of there. But yeah, that shit was crazy when that happened. Yeah, that's it. There's a few
Wow.
stories I could tell. But this is such a small percentage of like the amount of time I spent doing it. I mean, really, it's a lot of driving and sitting in parking lots, honestly, in hotels and stuff. Like there's like 98% work for like a 2% something, but that 2% is just so massive, and you forget about all the bad stuff because of the 2%.
Mm. Sounds like the adrenaline rush of that 2% is kind of what keeps you hooked onto it.
It's exciting. I mean, it's an exciting thing to go see. I mean, to watch a little cumulus cloud turn into a massive supercell, and just the sheer structure of it, and just Mother Nature is so powerful. Honestly, it's like I've seen lightning bolts hit the ground, and right near me, I photographed lightning, and like that's scarier than tornadoes. Honestly, at least you can see the tornado is there, but lightning can hit you from anywhere. You can be miles away from the storm, and it can travel through the clouds and then strike you. And shooting lightning was really scary, honestly. But
How did you get that shot?
the lightning.
Like,
So the way you shoot lightning is kind of, you basically, if it's dark out, right, normally, so you could just leave the shutter open on your camera, and you just have to adjust your f-stop depending on how much residual light is around you. And then just the lightning will flash, and you capture it basically,
mm.
a
So it's a
lot,
long exposure picture, essentially.
basically. Yeah,
Okay.
sometimes. Yeah. So that's how it works. And if you leave it open still, you can get multiple shots off of it, and then you can do multiple lightning bolts and stuff. But the thing is getting close enough that you have good lightning, that shows like anvil crawlers or just different things like that. And then um, sometimes the ambient light around you, if there is any, like street lights or anything like that, can mess it up too. So it's like you have to be in the right place. You have to be at the right angle to get really good shots. One time I shot something at like dusk, and that didn't come out very good. But then at the end, it ended up being phenomenal. It looked so good. It was very unique. And yeah, so I love shooting lightning. That's exciting.
Do you have a place where, like a website for seeing these, or do you just keep them to yourself?
I used to have a website, but I took it down because I was like paying like $200 a year for it, and I didn't do anything with the photos. Mostly just like showing people, but I don't really have anything posted. I might have some stuff on Instagram, but I don't really post stuff, honestly. So I think my thing is Storm Guide 99. Maybe you can look on Instagram. There might be some photos there, but I'm not like a Facebook posting guy or anything like that. And I printed a book. Next time I see you, I can bring like a couple of photo books if you want to see them. That has some of the better shots that I've ever taken.
Yeah, that'd be phenomenal. I'm surprised you didn't just go to like a free Wix site or something like that just to have them on there instead of paying so much for a website.
Well, this was some years ago, when I did it.
Mm.
Like, so yeah, I don't know. I never thought about it that way. I'm not a techie guy, so I wouldn't have thought to use like a Wix page or something where I could just upload them onto there. Like, yeah, I didn't even think about that. I mean, I guess I could do that still, realistically.
Oh yeah, there's so many options, but yeah, just if you, I mean, enjoy having it, sharing what you do, there's free places to do it. Instagram is, more of a marketing platform nowadays than
Yeah, I don't know.
share your art.
Yeah, I don't even open the app anymore. Honestly, I can't even enjoy looking at it. It's just so many commercials. It's just like it's not even worth it.
Yeah. Well, part of me is a little jealous because even though that is my field, like I need to be on Instagram for things that it's so easy to get sucked in and you just get bombarded for sure. I totally understand. Man, that's so fascinating. How did you get into storm chasing? What was like that one day where you're like, I want to go chase a storm. I want to go photograph
Yeah.
a tornado.
My best friend, who I was my college freshman roommate, is an amazing writer. Like what Albert Einstein is to physics, he is to the English language. Just one of those people, an expert, everything English writing. Anyhow, he wanted to write a book about a serial killer who killed people and associated it with tornadoes. Like, so he would kill people and it would be tied to a tornado. So he had to go and learn, he wanted to go storm chasing. This was in the early 90s. where we didn't have technology, we barely had internet and all this stuff. So he went when it was very raw. There were certain storm chasers that are pretty well known back then. He went with them and he got a bug for it. Over the past 30 years, he's taught himself meteorology in the sense of being able to predict storms because of his writing capabilities. He got in with a lot of forums and stuff. Some of these forums that had people at the storm prediction centers and really high level storm people. And he just made a name for himself. But he's a Jersey guy, so he pissed a lot of people off and also, made a name for himself. And he always made good money. So he just would go out there for like 4 to 6 weeks, like every year, and just spend that whole time learning how to chase. And so this was like in the mid 90s. And then in 99, he got me, I finally went with him. And I didn't see a tornado that year, but there's a place near Oklahoma University called a town called Moore in Oklahoma. And they've been hit with 3 major tornadoes in the past like 20 years. And it's like almost like if you Google search it, you can see the path of it is almost like identical. Like they overlap the trail of it and they actually overlap in this one bottleneck. And so the tornado had happened like a week or two before we got there, but I saw the destruction that it did, and it was just incredible. I mean, like you're driving, everything's normal, and then gone. Like everything's just destroyed. It was like a massive tornado, and then it starts back up again. So anyhow, I saw some cool storms, but we didn't know what we were doing back then. It was amazing we didn't die. I mean, we barely had cell phones. We didn't have internet in the car. We'd have to go to like libraries to get data information, and we'd had printers and all this crazy shit. And it was, so anyhow, we did that. And then, as technology's gotten better, we have like data in the car now. And we use like, what's the Elon Musk thing, the internet thing, the, what I'm talking
Satellites,
about?
his satellite internet,
Yeah. Well,
or
I can't remember,
I can't
Skylink
remember
or
the.
something like that. What?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds familiar. Yeah, I can't remember the name off the top of my
I
head
think
right now,
Skylink
Joe.
is Terminator, but it's whatever that is. We mounted that onto the car this year, and it was pretty crazy. So we always rent a vehicle, and he has these giant dogs. These Leon Burgers are like 185, 200-pound dogs, and he brings them both with us. And so we have this massive vehicle that we use just so we can bring the dogs. And yeah, we just, I get to go out with my best friend. I go for usually 2 weeks. I've gone for up to 3 weeks, and you just literally drive around the Midwest, sleeping in hotels. You never know what city you're going to go to sleep in, and like where you're going to go the next day until you wake up. You just put on thousands and thousands of miles. I drove like 10,000 miles in 2 weeks, and I love it. I mean, I couldn't. It's getting harder as I get older, but the Midwest is changed a lot over the years. I'm from New York, so it was interesting seeing like how the Midwest is, like, because you see it in a unique way, because you go places that you would no reason to be there, right? Like it's like if you're just driving across the country, you wouldn't go to any of these places. So we go to like every little nook and cranny town in all these places, and I actually go to some of them now, and I'm like, oh, I've been here before, and it's like no reason to be there. I call them blink towns, because if you blink once or twice, then you miss the town. It was so small. Like one time we were driving through Kansas, and some guy had a locomotive from like 1904 parked in his front yard, basically. Like it was like an engine. It had the coal car and a couple of cars behind it. I was like, I don't even know how it got there. And I stopped and I photographed it. It was pretty awesome. And you see a lot of like old towns that like you would see in the movies that aren't like functioning anymore, but they were in the 50s and stuff. And yeah, it's pretty awesome to see how the other half lives.
Wow, what incredible experiences! I feel like you can just tell stories about this for days.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to get you out there one year, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it sounds a little intimidating, but it sounds fun and exciting at the same time.
It's fine. I mean, some of it could be a little scary, especially if you're not. I'm desensitized to it, and I'm usually driving, so I can't be scared, even if I am. But we've been doing this a long time, and we try not to put ourselves in bad positions. Not to say that it can't happen, but we just figure it out. And the biggest thing is hail. Actually, it's just being able to avoid hail that's what messes your car up pretty bad. And we actually want to build a vehicle for years, for 10 years. I've wanted to do this. I just want to build my own vehicle for chasing so that we can be safer and be able to go punch a core of a storm and not worry about like baseball hail or anything like that. That's scary here, and like your car being pounded like that. It can just destroy your car, but you can build it in a way like using like Line X, like the stuff they use in the back of bed liners. You spray
Hmm.
the vehicle that way so it protects the outside, cover the windshields or get bulletproof glass and things like that. And yeah, you could totally punch the core and handle some hail.
Wow, that does sound intense. Being in a hailstorm, thinking, hopefully, I built this well enough just to withstand the storm.
Yeah,
That first
totally.
test, I could see how I could imagine being there and hoping everything worked out.
You would know pretty quick, honestly. I mean, there's a couple of guys that built like almost tank like vehicles to actually drive into tornadoes, basically. There's a guy named Reed Timmer. He built a couple of vehicles, and that it can handle the hail. He can handle up to 200-mile-per-hour winds and stuff. His cars got this shield on it, and then it could actually like sit down on the ground so that the air can't get underneath it. So he just can get to like really close and just set the vehicle down and just be inside it while all this craziness is going on, and he shoots stuff. And then this other guy built one out of like a dually, and the thing's almost like a tank. And they have ways to like in the Twister movie, the guy drilled into the ground. Like these guys have ones that actually like hydraulic jack into the ground or something like that, so the vehicle can't move or get lifted up. It's called the TIV. One's called the Dominator, and the other one's called the TIV. And I always see them out there, um, but they're a bunch of asshats. Honestly, I don't advocate for them.
Mm, just their vehicles.
Even still, I mean, I wouldn't want to chase in those things. I mean, who wants to drive? I want to see the tornado. I don't want to drive into one. It's like I don't know. I don't have any
Hmm.
interest in that. I mean, getting up close to it and seeing it would be cool, but like I don't want to drive into one. I mean, those things are powerful, man. It's like it's crazy, like what those things. It's such a small little thing can just be so destructive. It's just incredible, honestly, and it could just change at the drop of a hat, and get
Mm.
more stronger or something. It's like I don't want to tangle with that. I just want to see it. I don't want to be in it,
Yeah,
right?
I could be the person on the outside looking and admiring it.
Yeah, but I mean, the storm structures and everything, the supercells, like they're just incredible to look at. I mean, like just the sheer scale of it. It's just like the shapes that it makes, the darkness underneath it, and like you can see the clouds glowing because of hail that's being circulated through the storm. It's like it creates like a reflection, and it literally looks like there's green lights throughout the backlighting throughout the clouds and stuff. In certain parts and stuff. It's so incredible what Mother Nature is capable of.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, I know we could probably talk about this all day. I also want to kind of dive into your business, keys to success, and things like that, and a little bit about your background because I know you started in New York, you went to Robert Morris University in Pittsburgh, and then talking a little bit about like how that degree and all that stuff, you know, how that shaped your route as well. So just to kind of give you like overarching theme, the
Sure.
the the storm chaser was definitely one of the topics, and that's super dope.
Kind of just jumped into it. Yeah, I love talking about it. So obviously I get stupid giddy when I get into it. I wish I had some visual stuff. Just go look here. Check it out.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome. That's why I was like, oh man, if you had some photos or something, that would be some digital photos. That'd be cool.
I could
Um,
send some over to you.
yeah, that'd be sick. Because as a photographer myself, like I've never imagined like going out there and doing that stuff. So
Yeah. Honestly, I don't even use a digital. I mostly just use my iPhone. I even hesitate to call myself a photographer now because it's like I mean the storms I'll shoot on my phone. I mean if it's something worth taking the camera out for, because I don't even have like a good. My camera's so old, I don't even bring it with me. I just use my friend's camera because he drives out, so he has all the stuff. But the phones have gotten so good. I mean, it's hard to shoot lightning with it. I'll still use a digital SLR for that, but for shooting the storms, mostly in the videos, it's just so easy to use your phone. I mean, it shoots in 4K, so it's like, and then you have it there to do stuff with. The one thing I don't do is editing. So I usually shoot photography because I literally hate shooting video. I like shooting some of it just to have on my phone, but like, I wish I had the bug for shooting and editing video because honestly, I came up in the internet and I came up with when video production was happening, like when the internet was coming out and like all before YouTube and everything, where video productions were trying to figure out like how do we capitalize on this? So you had all these companies popping up everywhere that were shooting little mini videos and stuff. One of the most famous videos, I don't know if you ever saw this. It's called like, I think it's called like the 405, where there's a guy driving in a Jeep. This is like from the early 90s, and he's driving a Jeep Cherokee on the 405, and there's like no cars around him. All of a sudden he looks in his rearview mirror, and there's like a jumbo jet trying to land on the 405. And this was like really high tech stuff for back in that day. It's like, and this video went viral, but without YouTube or anything like that. So it was kind of crazy. So they used to have companies we try and sell like advertising on it. And they were just trying to figure out all these mediums to be able to use this stuff for. And if I really liked the video editing, I could have been more a part of that comeuppance of it. I really regret that now, but you like what you like, and there's a certain art to editing. I learned enough that I think I know how to shoot to some degrees, to shoot video with editing in mind. And it's like you have to think about that when you are shooting. And I think that's why it's really hard to shoot video. And you can't just flail a camera around everywhere. You need starting and stopping points. You need certain angles to know that, like, if you shoot from this side and this side, can these go together without it being too much of a jump? And can this transition into this? And, like, otherwise you have these bad edits. But now you have all this software that helps you with all this stuff too. So
Yeah, and the software it takes you to a certain point, but when you're really trying to get very intentional about like what you're doing, the software can't take you there exactly. If you have a specific thing in mind, a lot of the software, a lot of AIs can't do exactly what you want. It can get you like, yeah, it's good. I could just post it. But in my mind, like, say we were to do like a documentary on your storm chasing, man, just to think about the story, the different angles that we would want. There's also that, what you're saying, like thinking of the edit in mind is all the pre-production. And the more you can do pre-production, thinking about the edits, thinking about what the voices of the video and who we're talking to, and what's the purpose of everything, the easier it is when it comes to the day of the film and be like, okay, we need this, we need this, we need
the
these
shot
angles,
list,
the
you
shot
need your
list,
shot
exactly.
list. Yeah. Or
Shot
your
list.
storyboards or something like that. I actually
Well,
used to work in film production. I don't know if I told you that, but
no, you didn't.
so when I left Pittsburgh to come to California, that's what I did. I moved out here to work. My friend moved out here to talk me into moving out here. He didn't have to really talk me into it, but he suggested it because he wanted to move out here because he wanted to be an actor. And I didn't want to be an actor, but I wanted to work in production. And in college, I majored in communications and advertising and public relations. And we had a TV studio there, and I learned how to do some editing. I had classes, in production doing that. And then when I came out here, I was like, oh, try and work in film production. I wanted to work on movie sets or something like that. And I ended up getting my friend Dave, who I storm chased with, knew somebody that shot production because they hired him at one point to go on a storm chase, actually, because they needed some footage of storm chasing. So they actually hired him, which is funny because he wasn't nearly as much as he knows now. But to do this, so he's like, oh, give Jimmy a call. And so Jimmy worked for this production company that shot infomercials, basically. And so I offered to work for free just to get some experience. And so they like, who's going to say no to free work, right? So I moved. Before that, before I moved out here, my mom's father passed away, and he left me like 10 grand. So I never really had money before, because I was in college and bartended and things like that. And so he left me like this money. So that's why I used to move to California with. Like, I had money immediately to move out there with. So like literally I got a check 3 weeks later, I left and just changed my whole life, and they wouldn't rent to us because we didn't have a job. So we paid like 6 months of rent in advance for a 6 month lease, to at least get situated, which was great because when you live in California with no rent, everything here is super cheap. It was cheap to eat, it was cheap to live, or whatever. Honestly, if you're not paying for rent.
When was this? What year?
97.
And what was your
I
rent
mean,
back then? Just to ask.
I think we paid $800 a month for a 2 bedroom, 1.5 bath apartment in Studio City that was around the corner from Universal Studios. But I just came out of Pittsburgh and I had rented a whole house for like a little over $500 a month. And then I
Damn.
came out here and I get a 2 bedroom apartment for 800, I think, or 850 or something like that. Yeah. So anyhow, I worked in film production for a while and I got into commercials. I worked at a commercial production company and I got paid a lot more working in commercials than doing non-union infomercials. So I mostly did freelance for a while, and I was a production coordinator, and I would always be on the shoots. And honestly, because of that experience, is why when I learned about trade shows, I met this girl who we started dating in like 2006, and she was a designer, and she mostly did graphic design, but then she actually had a Korean client that she would design a trade show booth for. And I'd been to shows before. I didn't know much about trade show booths or where those came from or anything. And she showed it to me. I was like, wow, this is pretty neat. And then the next year she did it again. And I saw the process a little bit more. And I was like, this would be a cool job to have, you know? Like, and then her brother in law ended up needing a booth from Korea. Like, they had a wind power company and they were going to exhibit in the US at the wind power show for the first time. This was in 2007. And so we were like, oh, let's just start a business, you know? And started this company called Space Potential, and we were in downtown LA. And back then the industry was different. You really couldn't outsource and do the booths the way I do it now. You had to we tried it that way, but we just weren't getting anywhere. So I ended up just getting an equipment lease, and I was able to buy like $60,000 worth of trade show frames to build booths with. And then I was like, holy, I don't have any place to put it. And so I was like, I had to go get like these storage units. Like, there's a storage unit place in downtown LA right off the 101, and whatever that street is, like where the bus station is and the train station is, I can't remember. Alvarado, I think on the 101 in Alvarado, there's like a play, and they just built like 3 10 by 30 storage units with a loading dock. So I was like, I'll take all 3 of those, and like literally they were brand new.
So you had
So then
$60,000 worth of equipment and like or building material, correct?
Yeah,
You
so I bought this frame system basically. So it's an aluminum frame system that would go together. It's like a modular system, and then you just put like panels that Velcro onto it, and you can just build booths out of it. And that's what a lot of exhibit houses do. So you can just make multiple jobs. I can make counters, I can make walls, I can make canopies. You can just make whatever out of it. You know, it's just an aluminum frame, and it just goes together with like toolless connectors basically.
okay? And then so you started would when someone hired you, would you sell them the material, like you build it for them and then sell it to them, or you're renting it, like they rent it from you, the material, and you just build it and then you get the material back?
Yeah, so we would design something like a 3D rendering of a booth, and then we would show it to them and give them a price. And if they did it, then we would just make it. And yeah, it'd just be a custom rental. And we would set it up, build it, send it to the show. I would go and hire labor, we'd install it, and then we would tear it down and bring it back and repurpose all the stuff and throw away the graphics and things like that.
What
That
was
was
it
the
that you
cycle.
found? Oh, that was gotcha. What was it that interested you into this world? Like, what about the industry made you think, "Oh, this would be awesome," versus what you were doing, which was working in the film industry more or less?
Yeah, I had stopped working in the film industry after a few years because it's a very thankless job, and I got sick of the budgets and the way you had to work really hard on freelancing on jobs, and then you wouldn't have a job for a while. It was just like the ups and downs of it. It was really great. I'm glad I did it. It was the best learning experience I ever had. Right after that, I took a normal job as a hospitality recruiter because I worked in the hospitality industry, like in restaurants and stuff, and I did catering and events and things like that. I took a normal job for one of the only times in my life, and this company taught me how to be a recruiter. I used to like getting people jobs in film production, and I was like, oh, this would be cool to do this for a living. I did that, and that's when I met the girl. I was doing that at the time. The thing about the trade show industry that I liked is that it combined a lot of, I was never one of those people that knew what they wanted to do when they grew up. I just did things that I thought were fun and I enjoyed doing. When I got introduced to trade shows, I didn't know how to apply my background and my skill sets of like hospitality, film production, and just whatever. And all of a sudden the trade shows came up. I'm like, oh my God, this is like literally you have customer facing type stuff. I have a hospitality background, and then I have the production side where I have to build a set, I have to ship it, I have to hire unions, I have to do all the things I used to do for film production, but it was actually easier because film production is way more stressful. So I was like, even though I had no trade show experience, my production background was good enough that it was a great foundation to build on, So I just had to learn the ins and outs of like doing trade shows, like with the venues, their unions, and the costs involved with it and all that stuff. So, and I learned through a lot of trial and error. Honestly, I made a lot of mistakes, but it worked. I did it for like 8 years. I learned a lot and did a lot.
Yeah, I love how you just found this perfect, or this job kind of found you, this industry found you, and it was perfect with all your experience melding together.
Yeah, never
Yeah,
happens.
never never happens. Eh?
Stuff never happens. I can't believe I actually found it, and then I just loved it. I mean, I'm doing it for 18 years now. It's been since I started doing this, and it's just like, and then it's grown into like the fact that I love business and I get to work in every industry with all these different products, and I learned so much about different companies and different services and products like almost every day, and it's like every industry has a trade show, so it's like, I get to learn about so much cool stuff and products and just the people in it, the people that work in the industry. And then I actually get to help companies have better shows because, now that I have this level of experience, it's not just about selling a booth to them. It's about them having a good trade show. And I like to try and educate them on how to have better shows and if they're open to it, and sometimes because I work in so many industries, it allows me to offer ideas to things that I see in other industries that don't exist in theirs, which helps them stand out and stuff. And trade shows are very stressful, and my whole thing has always been like, I want to be able to take the stress out of their trade shows. They have their jobs that they have to do, and they have to plan a trade show on top of it. And then these employees don't get extra money for doing it. It's like a lot of extra work and responsibility that they have to be burdened with, and they get no extra value out of it. If anything, it's quite the opposite. And then you have some of these companies that want them to go to the show and set up the booth themselves and do all the stuff and then actually do the trade show and then still keep up on their job. I mean, it's crazy what some of these companies do to go to shows. So I'll come in and be like, well, why are you going to do that? It's like, you're not saving yourself any money that way. Just if you have me do it, you show up, the booth is ready to go. Your team is fresh. You're spending less money on hotels and having them being gone longer from their families. They can focus on work more. Then they come in, they do their show, they're fresh, excited, tired, and pissed off. I mean, you go to places like Orlando and Vegas and have to set up a booth in the heat. It's like, or Chicago in the brutal cold. Like, that's nothing for people to be able to. Employees shouldn't have to do that stuff. And but not everybody's like that. But that's what I like the most about it, is just the exposure to. That's what I like about being an EO. So it's like between EO and my job that I get to literally just talk about business stuff all the time. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. For the audience, can you clarify like what EO is and what you do there?
Sure. Yeah, so it's an entrepreneurs organization called EO. It's been around for a few decades, and it's a place for CEOs or company owners or key employees. It's an organization that you belong to. It's worldwide. Our chapter is an Orange County chapter. They have one in LA, and every city pretty much has one. They have an accelerator program for people that have companies that are under $1 million, and that helps you get to that 4%. There's a 4% rule where only 4% of the companies get to $1 million or more. And EOA is focused on that. A lot of it's based off of a book called Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. And they use the Rockefeller principles. There's a book about Rockefeller and stuff. And it's like these business principles. The name's escaping me at the minute.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so he has a program based on that. And then you can get into EO, and EO is like when you could do $1 million or more in your business, and you have people that are there at like all these different levels, from very low millions to multi-millions, people that have exited companies and stuff. And they help you get into forums, and they do events and all this stuff. And the forums are really to help you to not just be better at business, but to like help you to improve as a person and to work on this 1% that you're not like maybe willing to talk about with other people. That you have this core group of people you can identify with, because when you own a business, nobody ever wants to talk about business. You're kind of on your own. You can't talk to employees. You can't talk to your friends. Your wife doesn't know anything about it. So It's like almost like this place that you can go where it's safe and confidential, and you have this incredible support network of resources, information, and just a friend or something like that. And you guys so it's a pretty cool group actually for that. And there's different kinds of entrepreneur organizations, but this one I belong to though.
Yeah. What would you say has been some of your greatest keys to success? I mean, you're part of EO in a $1 million organization or more, which congratulations on being, up in the top 4%, right? But I know that there's a journey for every entrepreneur, right? We don't start out of the womb with a $1 million business. So, what has been some of your biggest keys you think to success in your business?
Well, you make a lot of mistakes and you learn from them. There's nothing wrong with a mistake as long as it's a new one. And I started my first business. I think it was like then being naive about it was like makes it more achievable because you're willing to just go and do things and not overthink it. You just go and do it, and you're like, I could do this, and I'll just start this business or whatever. Then as you get more experience, it changes and it becomes about the people. Figuring out like what is your business really, and like what do you want it to accomplish. I made a lot of mistakes over the years trying to do too much, and it's not good to be good at a few things, and as opposed to being really great at one thing, and you know and focusing your attention that way. And I think it's an evolutionary process of like trial and error and trying to figure out what works. If I didn't do space potential, I couldn't do what I'm doing now. And because I had space potential, I had a lot of stress of overhead and dealing with other people and all this stuff. And it worked for back then, but now my business, so we outsource everything. I've been a solopreneur for like 8 years. And I basically just took a lot of the things that I learned then and applied it to now. And I read a lot of business books. I listen to a lot of podcasts and hear how other people do their businesses. And you can learn this stuff at different times in your life or different stages of your business experience, entrepreneurial experience, but it doesn't always identify with it. Like this past year, I've actually had a lot of changes towards my business, and I'm trying to have a new focus now. And I didn't really have one. I would just keep doing jobs, and didn't really have like an exit or anything ideas towards that. So yeah, I think it's just something you work on yourself, you work on your knowledge of things and surrounding yourself with the right people. It's easy to get burned in business, and if you have good resources and good people around you, it makes a difference because you just don't know how to do everything, and it's like there's a lot of information out there. And one of the things in EO that they show you is like when they give you information, it's like drinking out of a fire hose. And it's like a lot of times there's just so much information, you're just getting blasted in the face with this water hose. And it's like you have to pull out these nuggets and apply it to you. And it takes time, honestly. I'm still learning like literally every day. There's so much I don't know. Um, I look at these big companies or other people in EO, they have all these employees or they're manufacturing and the overhead and do all this stuff. I'm just like, oh my God, it's like, I'm so blown away by that. I'm like, I'm not at a place where I would want to do that, So I'm trying to find my own business model to grow the business and to be bigger and stuff by that. I don't know if that answered the question or not. It was a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of awesome nuggets that you have said that, I mean, diving deep into any of them could be another class, another podcast in itself. But one thing, you're solo entrepreneur and you've got this business of outsourcing where you're outsourcing most of what you do. I think a lot of times people think that is a scary. I mean, there's two different things. You have, employees, which you're kind of outsourcing work to that, where you're hiring, which you've had, and then now you're outsourcing people. I would love to know more about like how does that work more in your benefit and allow you, like, because there's like a big trust. It's almost like you're hiring multiple different companies to do your putting your name on it. So like how does that work? There's quality control, there's and things like that. How does that process? I'm sure it's like a GC similar model, but I'm not, I always think about that fear of letting go.
Yeah, it's hard not being in control of everything. It's hard to rely on other people sometimes, but I think it's just like I said earlier about having the right partners. You find the right vendors to work with, and I've been up and down with vendors. They have their ups and downs, and it's just about the relationship you have with them and how you act towards things that do happen. I mean, I try and prepare them as much as possible, but unfortunately, information doesn't always trickle down to the bottom, and things get lost or whatever. And I've spent a lot of years trying to find the right vendors to be able to work with. And I'm constantly looking all the time for new vendors. Like it's never stops. I'm always looking for the next person that can help me or a certain area that can help me. It's got to be a lot. And especially now when I got to be certain type of busyness, like there's booths at every different stages, all these projects. And it's been really hard to manage that by myself. I actually just hired a VA for the first time, a virtual assistant. So she's been working with me for a little over a month now to do all the stuff that I'm not good at, like with technology, like with the HubSpot or whatever, or scheduling and just whatever. So I'm training her to be a better asset to me to help me manage this stuff. But yeah, you get people to send you photos and you communicate and just kind of keep on top of things with them and hope that it comes out right, and then you ship it there and it gets damaged and you got to deal with that, I guess. The interesting part about the outsourcing that's been so much better than before, like when I had Space Potential, you couldn't outsource as much back then. There was a few vendors, and I had this one vendor that had these super inexpensive booths. They included shipping and labor and stuff. Somebody called me one time and they had a super low budget for like a 20 by 20 booth. Most people would have just hung up on them. I was like, I have a solution to this trust booth, and it wasn't anything sexy or anything, but I was able to do the whole thing for like 20, 22 grand or something like that. All I had to do was send a bunch of emails, and I made like 5 to 7 grand out of it or something like that. I literally didn't have to build anything. I didn't have to pack anything. I had to ship to walk into the warehouse. I didn't have to get out of my chair to sell a job like that. And I was like, why am I building these booths? Why do I go through all this stress and all this overhead when I could just have other people do all this work, and then maybe I go to the installation or something like that, and then I could just leave. I used to spend the whole entire week at the show. I would go there and set it up. I'd spend the whole week out there because it didn't pay to fly back because I had to dismantle the booth, and I didn't trust the labor enough to just do it themselves. Now I do, but and it just changed my mindset. And I was like, at the end of the day, the clients don't care where the boots come from. They don't know if it's from my warehouse or somebody else's warehouse, as long as it's what it looks like in the rendering. We send them pictures and all that stuff. And, so I was like, that's what changed my whole mindset towards it. And then when I started this version of it, it was way more profitable. And even if it wasn't, then I didn't have the overhead. I didn't have to worry about anything. I didn't have to make like a $5,000 a month payment on this or pay for this equipment. And then, paying taxes, I had to pay depreciation value on all the equipment that I owned. And it was just like the happiest days I had when I can go into my warehouse and sweep it, because that meant it was empty. If it was empty, I was making money. If that place was filled with stuff and I couldn't sweep, I wasn't making any money, and it's like that sucks. And also, you're limited to be able to only produce what your space will allow, right? So you only have so much staff, so much inventory, and so much space to work with. So that means I can only do so many jobs at one time. Well, doing it this way, I can farm it out to as many companies as I need to, and it doesn't matter if it's all in the same week, because I can have 3 different companies building booths for me if I ever had to. And I'm not limited by those resources anymore. It's just limited by my capacity to being able to manage them, you know? And once the stuff's going, they're building it. There's nothing for me to do other than just check in on it. And when COVID happened and my whole entire industry got shut down, I just waited. I didn't have the stress that everybody had with dealing with all the staff and all the overhead and working with the leasing, your property and all this stuff. Like none of that mattered, you know? I mean, I grew my first business during the recession, and it taught me cash is king and is have as little debt as possible. It's easy to borrow money when you have no debt and you have cash and you don't have to use your own money for it then. But I didn't have that luxury back then. And, you know, when I did this, I was like, well, I didn't need to collect any money. I didn't need to take that SBA loan everybody was getting and stuff. I didn't have to worry about any of it. So I just collected unemployment for the first time in my life because they allowed business owners to do that. And then they had the PPP, and I was able to collect that. And I even got a grant from the state of California, actually, that they gave grants out for businesses and stuff. So I didn't make as much money, but I didn't lose any money during that time period. And then when we came back from it, it was slow at first, but then the second year, everybody came back. It was just like, we just got crushed, and I had the best year ever. Doubled my best year of sales in 1 year. And it was just insane. And I did it all by myself, which was even more insane. I didn't have any help back then. So,
Wow.
it depends on the business model, really. So it's like, I personally don't want to own a bunch of stuff. I used to want to have a building with my company name on it and all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't care now about any of that stuff anymore. Being lean and mean is the way to go, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it has a lot of upside. um, the way you run your business. I mean, and that's awesome that you found something that can be both profitable, give you the lifestyle you want, and without the headaches that you used to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, you have different headaches, but, it's still better this way. It's way better.
Yeah. What would you say is, because you mentioned you're looking to expand your business, what is that next expansion? Also, and what's the name of your business for the audience?
Oh, sorry. So it's exhibit potential.
Okay. And then, so what's the vision for the next step? If you've come up with it yet or anything.
I've had a few versions of it. The ultimate one was to be able to create more Rosses that I can have other like offices like this, like home offices of people who can do what I'm doing. As long as we can funnel generate the leads to them enough that they can do it the way I'm doing it, where like you could say like we're going to get like salespeople and stuff to do it, but I want people that maybe have some skin in the game and not so much just be a salesperson because I don't know. I think things get complicated in that sense. So like, I, I don't know how else to describe it other than maybe like a franchise model, but like not literally a franchise where we have like separate offices in different parts of the country and people are able to operate under my flag basically. You work in the trade show industry and people always have these aspirations of working for themselves, but to just start a company is not easy to do and to establish a history and to show that you're not just somebody that just started, but you need something like that. So I can provide that. You go to my website, you see all the jobs we've done and all the ideas that we've created. And I have endless like referrals and just because we've been doing it for so long, and so they can have that and then still do it on their own. And then maybe it's like a profit sharing kind of thing or something. I don't know. It's just such a weird model that I'm like, it's hard to put it together that way because it's like, how do you control it? How do you hold them accountable? Like, how do you do it in a way where you can trust them? Like how much do you let them do on their own? Um, and how does it come? So there's a lot of things like that, but it's the only way I can think of expanding is that some form of that. Because I don't want to keep grinding like I am. I want to be somebody who can oversee people now. Like that's my next level. I don't want to keep doing this to day anymore. I'm kind of been doing this a long time, and I'm ready to finally try and find a new way of doing this. So part of the problem has been like last year and this year have been different. As far as like I've been doing the trade show stuff long enough that like I've seen waves of it going up and down. So like for example, in early 2000s, it was booming. Like people described to me like, yeah, you just hear the beep beep beep, the money truck just backing up to your door, And then the recession hit, and then all of a sudden people got hammered, and nobody was going to shows. Companies were trying to give booths away for free just to keep their clients and all this stuff. And I grew my first business during that time period. And it worked out for us because people that were very committed to their exhibit house were willing to go someplace else. And I was a small mom and pop shop, so we were able to like do it cheaper than a lot of companies were because we just wanted to build the business. So 2008, 9, 10 were actually pretty decent years for us. And then it started doing the off a little bit in 12 and 13, but she and I kind of got burned off on doing it, and we were kind of ready to just. I wasn't making a lot of money, and for the amount of work. But like I said, I wouldn't trade it in because without that I couldn't do this. Um, and then now, so things went really well in the first 16, 17, 18, and then 19. I had my best year ever, and then 20 was going to be a great year, and then COVID happened, and then like I literally went from like speeding down the highway to slamming into a brick wall, and I was like, holy crap, like everything I ever knew how to do in my life didn't exist anymore. Like there was not a single skill set that I had that you were allowed to do for that 2 years. And it was a very humbling experience, honestly, because but I knew trade shows would come back, and I waited. I was actually able to have a unique partnership come out of it because I connected with some people that I'd met many years ago that remembered me, and they had an exhibit house and they closed their exhibit house during COVID, but they still had their lead generator on. They still had their website up and all this stuff, and they had really good quality leads. The guy was really good at creating a sales funnel for this stuff, and so rather than just sell the leads to other exhibit houses, they asked me if I'd be interested in doing like a partnership with them. They don't have anything to do with the day-to-day operations of my business, but we have a deal worked out for me to get the sales leads from them, which would actually be a way for me to help to grow the business now, because I don't have to look for jobs separately now because of all the work that they put into it. I mean, I still, get jobs too on my own, but, between the two of us, it creates a really good stream of opportunities. And so with that, I could actually potentially do this expansion, with the leads, but the opportunities are not the same as they were last year. So I feel like last year, I think everybody was coming out of the COVID clause and be like, yeah, we got to go exhibit, we got to go do this and do this. And then now that novelty is worn off because of inflation and just the unemployment, whatever it is, like all the things that create whatever in business, So like this year, it's been a different vibe than last year. I think a lot of the excitement wore off last year. And then this year you have this. And I think next year it'll probably go back up again because I think like just the whole election thing makes people stressed out. Companies, they don't know how to prepare for like what party gets elected because that'll affect their taxes as a company and stuff. So you know how much money they're going to have. I mean, little things like that all add up, in the sense of like your marketing budget, right? So if people don't want to commit to that stuff, so they're going to scale it down. Um, the one thing that the recession taught companies was that they would go really big at a trade show, and then all of a sudden they couldn't anymore. They would drop their budgets to like half or even less than half, and they would go to the show and they would actually get the same results as they did when they spent a ton of money. So they're like, well, why are we spending so much money on these trade show booths if we had the same result? So they kept their budgets down for a number of years, and it wasn't in, I think, a good 5 to 7 years before it really started killing it again. And all the money and all that stuff, people are spending money on the booths, but then it, 3-4 years into it, then COVID stopped it. So I've seen these cycles go through, and it's been kind of interesting, honestly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's so many more questions that I have personally, but we've gone through quite a bit of time here today. So I want to be cognizant of your time and wrap things up. I have just uh, two quick questions, and then we'll do the little intro because we didn't do it at the beginning. That I ask people, and one of them is if you were on an island and you were allowed to bring your favorite food, and this is the only food you could, only food you eat, you never got sick of it, you stayed healthy all the time, what would you eat? You still had a six pack,
Geez, I don't know. Probably like lobster or seafood kind of thing. Like I'm like I like that kind of stuff. Or yeah, probably lobster or maybe even barbecue, like ribs or something. Yeah, something like that. I don't know. It's hard to decide. I couldn't say. I'd say lobster is probably like, oh, is my original favorite things to eat. So I'll just say that.
And then if you had a billboard that, this is a Tim Ferriss thing, if you had a billboard um, that could have one quote on it that represented something you wanted to leave behind your legacy, and you could only say one thing on it, what would it be on that billboard?
Like one sentence.
One phrase, one sentence. In general, if you're leaving some advice behind and you want people to know about it, is there anything that sticks out to you?
I mean, something I learned in college that I've always kind of said is like, there's nothing wrong with a mistake as long as it's a new one, basically. Because you have to learn somehow, right? And you have to make a mistake to learn. But if you make the same mistake over and over again, then you're not learning anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing wrong with a mistake
Because it's a new one.
as long as it's a new one. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Uh, always, always moving forward and learning from your past mistakes. And it sounds like that's it's been a huge theme with this whole conversation of you just learning from your mistakes and those eventually leading to this pinnacle moment where you're like, this is the perfect job for me. Oh my gosh, this business model is so much better than
Yeah.
the past. And I'm sure it's just going to keep doing that as try something in this expansion that you're doing. Yeah, that's awesome. I look forward to learning more about that as well. And just so people know where to find you for if they're interested in a trade show, maybe give just like a quick, if you need help with X, Y, and Z, and here's where to find us.
So the company is called Exhibit Potential. You can find us at exhibitpotential.com. We design and build trade show exhibits for rental, for sale. We help with trade show services. We do consulting to help you have a better trade show, so that we could basically, our whole thing is be able to take the stress out of your trade shows. We want you, so it's not just about selling a booth or you getting a booth from us. It's about the experience that you have, and we want you to have a good one so that your company can get the ROI that they need, or the recognition that they need, whatever. Everybody's got a different reason for going to trade shows. So we like to help you figure out your goals and to, have that positive experience.
Awesome. Love that. Yeah, please go check them out. Ross, thank you so much for being on the show. And if you guys got any value from this or just had some fun, please share this with a friend, with a family member. It really helps get Ross out there, get this podcast out there. Would really greatly appreciate that.
Thank
So
you.
again, thanks, Ross, for being on the show.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.